let's talk about Canada, the farthest team, or the Concacaf team that went the farthest in the Copa America. Big Tones, I'm going to come to you first. Does this mean now that Canada's kings of Concacaf? Is that how this game works? I'm not sure how this goes.
You're coming to me first on this?
Sure.
Yeah, I suppose it does, right? Right now, I mean, they're the team that got the furthest, so you got to give them their credit. Good on Jesse Marsh for getting the job done. We were talking today on Morning Footy about where this kind of fits in for Canada. I think this is massive for them. This is massive for them in a tournament like this. So at the moment, Canada is the king of CONCACAF.
All right, we're going to sign off on the Golazo Network. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're going to keep it going on the YouTubes, though, if you want to come over and hang out there with us. But yes, keep the Golazo Network going. Just keep it running 24/7. Or I guess we might still be going. So if we're still going on Golazo Network, still going on YouTube, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us on Call It What You Want. Chuck, same question to you. Where does Canada rank now? If you had to say who were the tops of CONCACAF, is it Canada, U.S., Mexico? Is it U.S., Canada, Mexico? Is it Mexico just last and it doesn't matter who's on top of them?
U.S. are still 1, Canada 2, and then Mexico, Panama can fight it out for 3 and 4. But Canada had a favorable path to a semifinal. Let's also put that in perspective. They didn't have to play Uruguay and Colombia and Brazil, right? So I give Jesse a lot of credit from taking that Canada side that was kind of in a difficult spot once John Herdman left and the federation was in a difficult spot. It took the 3 MLS Canadian teams to come into the picture and pay his salary, right? So he comes in and he just gives them hope, right? And it's not the most attractive style. They leave themselves open and they're vulnerable, but how many goals did they score from open play, right? So not the most inspiring performance in terms of getting the most out of your players, because I still think that Jonathan David and Kyle Larin are playing them together is not the way forward. Especially Jonathan David, you saw just didn't look sharp in front of goal, and I think that's due to having to drop so deep and try and create when his strength is in the box and finishing. So given that, congrats to Jesse Marsh and getting Canada to a semifinal, because that's massive for them and for their program. A lot to look forward to in the future, and he has a lot of work to do, but they're not better than us. Like I'm sorry.
No, I guess the best way to what players on Canada would we take on the US? Alphonso Davies. I think Jonathan David would be in the conversation as well. Tajon Buchanan, when he's healthy and full of confidence, I think would be in the conversation as well. And then outside of that, I'm not so sure. Those are kind of the ones that just jump out, but I think that's the best way to look at it.
I think you got to throw in Maxime Crepeau.
We would take
Crepeau made
yeah, you got to throw in Maxime Crepeau.
Crepeau was very good. You're right. Crepeau would be another one.
He had a really good tournament. And I guess based on the tournament, Schaffelberg, you take him as a substitute, right? Guy coming off the bench that could run at the fences late in games. But yeah, you know what? I'd take Kone on our team. I think he's got a massive, massive upside. Watched him in Montreal, covered him, and watching him now go to Europe, I think he's got a big upside.
Yeah, I agree with
you on
that.
To see. Yeah, no, I love Kone as well, and he didn't start there for a game or two, so I'm curious what was happening behind the scenes. Maybe Jesse can come on after the tournament and give us some insight. That's he said he would, so we'll see if he'll follow up and walk that talk. All right, let's go circle back to the U.S. men's national team and just talk about the team and just the program and our next steps. Now, Chuck, you had already mentioned that you want to take some time to make sure we get the right person, but I also think it's important that we get the right person in before the 3 friendlies in September.
But Jimmy, what the right person?
That gives us 6 weeks to hire somebody.
Right, I know, but I'm saying the right person. It's so complex, because the right person now doesn't mean that's the right person in 1 month, and that doesn't mean it's the right person in 2 months, and it doesn't mean that's the right person for this team, right? So, what in your mind does the coach have to be available now, or could this be a time to go out and kind of put some feelers out there for coaches who already have leave that job, and what's realistic? Because obviously Jurgen Klopp would be an amazing coach to come in and try and turn this around in 18 months. But is that realistic? You know, what have you heard, and what are your thoughts towards that whole process?
Well, yeah, I actually want to talk to Tones about this too, because he's mentioned the right person, and so what are those qualities that we're looking for? For me, as I mentioned before, I want someone that has a winning mentality, that has a track record of winning, that has that in their DNA and demands that of their players every time they step on the field. And that might make some of our players that are currently in the pool that play regularly a little bit uncomfortable, that they have to also compete for their spot, you know, game in and game out every time they wear the red, white, and blue. So there's that element I want. And having some international experience, I think, would be helpful, because a tournament format is much different than just being a club manager. And you obviously, there are outside tournaments, cup competitions, and Champions Leagues and all that type of stuff.
60 more minutes of AOL online.
But I ultimately, yeah, I in terms of a right person, it's interesting. It is complex. I don't think it's straightforward. And to what Tony was saying before, it's finding that person who can challenge the group and still continue the culture that they have, the strong culture that they have, and ultimately get the most out of them. I love what Tone said before. If our team is currently rated a 6, how can we get them to, you know, just to start, get them to an 8? And once we get good at being consistently good as an 8, how do we get them up to a 10? Or how can we have them match teams that when they play at a 10, we can also play at a 10? And how adaptive and fluid can we be in game? Because I don't think we do a very good job of managing the game. And I don't think we've done that consistently under Greg Berhalter. Did we do it at times? We did, but it wasn't there consistently. And when we needed it the most, against Panama recently in the Copa America, in the round of 16 against the Dutch, where they asked questions and we didn't have answers. And that is what I want to get over, that part of that game, that frustration that I have, that I see from our team on not necessarily a regular basis, but that we lack that consistency. So Tones, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on what that right manager looks like for you.
Yeah, you framed it nicely about it's about getting the best out of players. I'm just kind of writing down names throughout the day. One just came to mind, and I'm just writing down names. I'm going to throw it out there. Edin Terzic, right? Attacking style at Dortmund, leaves. He's been a Dortmund guy forever. He said he was looking for a new project. Stefano Pioli just left. I love the way he set things up at Milan over the last couple of years. Won a Scudetto. Could you throw his name into the mix?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, Pochettino's out there, Max Allegri's out there. Like, these are big names that have also coached. Sergio Conceição.
So Gio Reyna's got to go. if Terzic comes in, Gio's not playing.
Well, same thing with Tuchel and Pulisic, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, not every guy's going to satisfy every single player, but again, this has to be the guy that takes over for me. The guy that and again, Pellegrino Matarazzo, he's out there, he's got connections here. I don't know. You can look at his success or lack of in some instances, and David Wagner, like, you can look at some successful moments, some not so successful. I mean, I'm not endorsing any one person. I put Thierry Henry with the caveat that he has a good Olympics. Charlie, you and I talked about this, yesterday or the day before. So again, I'm just building a list in my head for people to think about. But again, going to have to go through an interview process. I'm curious, will we do this testing with all of these coaches? Like, this was so big, this 2-day test. Like, if you want to bring Mauricio Pochettino, I don't care if you want to bring a guy like that, or Jurgen Klopp, everyone wants Jurgen Klopp. You want to bring Jurgen Klopp in, and you're going to tell him he's going to have to do 2 days of testing? And
he has to do the
PowerPoint? He's not doing testing. No, exactly. You don't do testing with that. I mean, you know what he can do, and that's a guy's a serial winner. I think he can motivate the group. There's a lot about his characteristics that I like.
You got to sit down and do it. You got to test him. What's his knowledge of the game?
Come on, Chuck. He would just have that big grin, like, why am I doing this? So
Jimmy, so in all seriousness, right? So you're already breaking the mold that you said was the way to hire, not you in particular. I'm talking about you.
No, Matt Crocker. Sure.
You're already breaking the mold of how you said 14 months ago. This is how you hire. We hired a group from Ireland, I believe Sportsology is from, right? At least one of their offices is there. We hired a group to come here and put this all together for us and paid the money to do this, and now we're going to throw it out.
Yeah,
Like,
we should throw it out 100%.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. But is that what they're going to do?
Well, they shouldn't do that. This is bigger than that. You know, I understand. And Tab Ramos, we talked about his quote. Like, there's a time and place to potentially have those types of hires and to put them through that process. Jurgen Klopp doesn't need to go through that process. We're just trying to get the biggest name that has a ton of experience, that ticks most of the boxes that we need. The only thing that he lacks is international experience, which I think wouldn't be that big of an issue. And got to motivate the guys to win games when it matters. That's what we're looking for. Win games when it matters. And they've got an 18-month to 2-year run-up to make that happen. And they're going to have friendlies and games and opponents that aren't going to challenge our group as much as we would like. So they're going to have to fill that void in some capacity too. So that has to be taken into consideration. And that's the stuff I would interview them about. Hey, Jurgen Klopp, by the way, we can't get you any friendlies against big opponents because of the Nations League and all the other crap competitions that are out there that are limiting our opportunity to do that. How do we fill that in? How do you make us competitive going into the biggest tournament that we will ever host, potentially in recent history, because we did it in 94. It was a big boon to growing the sport here and just making it bigger and bigger and bigger. We need someone that can continue to build off of that, stand on the shoulders of everybody else that have done it before us, and continue to push us in the right direction. I don't care about any of the other stuff. That would be my number one question. How do you make us competitive despite not having a lot of competitive games? That would be one of my number ones. I don't know what question you guys would ask in the interview process, but I'm curious.
Well, that's it. What do you think of our roster? How do you want to play? What are your principles of playing? Like, these are things, because those have to fit the players that we have. When you look at our roster, do you see any changes you'd make right away? Where would you make those changes? What do you like about the roster? What do you dislike about the roster? What can you do? As you mentioned, in we're going to have 16 months or so, something like that, 18 months, whatever it is. What do you, in this time, like, what's the progression? Where do we want to be? I mean, all these things have to be asked. Where do you sit on dual nationals? Like, are you going to go out and, one thing Brian McBride and Greg Berhalter,
Ernie Stewart,
yeah, they did a great job with dual nationals. Is the next group of guys going to come in and do that? Or are they going to care about, do they have time to do that? Where are we with all of those? So there's a lot of questions to be answered. But yeah, I mean, to your point, what can you do for this group?